Hi and welcome to another episode of Peacemake TV. In today's video for Photoshop, we're going to take a look at how we can create this great looking watercolor textured text effect. Now the beauty of this method is the fact that your text retains its editability, so should you want to change the text later on down the line, you don't have to go through the entire process of recreating the graphic from scratch. Now for this example, I'm going to be using a couple of commercial graphics for the watercolor and splash effects, but a quick search on Google and you should throw up thousands of great looking free alternatives. So without further ado, let's jump into Photoshop and take a look at how we can create this great looking watercolor text effect. So I've jumped into Photoshop, and as you can see, this is the end result we're working towards. It's a pretty cool looking effect and can work really nicely both in print and on screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back now to the very beginning, and we're going to take a look at bringing all the elements together and working with this particular effect. So let's just open up a new document. So we're just going to File and New. We'll just create a new document, and we'll click on Create. So we've got everything we want on there. Now it's worthwhile thinking that when you're going to create an effect like this, choosing the right kind of font. So we want something that's sort of like a handwriting, nice and bold, looks like it's a little bit loose. That works really, really well. So let's just open up and add some text in there. So what we're going to do, we're going to use a font called the Historia for this particular example. So we're just going to call in watercolor. And let's just drag that over, and we'll press Control and T to resize that so we can get a nice large version of that on screen. Okay, so we press Enter to finalize our transformation. So everything is now in place to start creating this effect. The beauty of this is that the way we're going to do it is that it means the text stays editable. So if you want to change the word in there, you want to create a sort of template that you can use and just change just by adjusting the text, well, this is going to work really well for you. So we've done that. Next thing we need to do is now bring in some of the textures we're going to start using to create the watercolor effect. So let's start off by adding the actual underlying color for the text itself, and then we'll take a look at adding some more background elements in there. Okay. What I'm going to do is going to come up, and I've got all my files open, and this is the file that we're going to use for the watercolor background effect. You can see it's got a great looking effect, and we can use it because it's larger than the text. We can use this to really get some individual kind of looks. So what I'm going to do is make sure the move tool is selected, come over, drag the layer over into our watercolor effect. Just drop that in there. It doesn't really matter where it goes. It's a little too large at the moment, so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out. Press Control or Command T on the keyboard, and we'll resize that by holding the Shift and the Alt keys down together to constrain the proportions of that, making sure that it covers the entire text layer. Okay, so there we go. That's done that. Press Enter to finalize those changes. Now all we need to do to get this to sit inside our text as opposed to over the top of it is to hold the Alt key down on the keyboard, and you'll see that if we take our mouse in between the two layers, in between layer 1, which is the watercolor effect, and the actual text layer, it changes now to show that if we click this, when we've got the Alt key held down, that's going to only affect the current layer that we've got selected, in this example, watercolor. So we click, and you can see now that watercolor, the actual background image, is only applied to the watercolor text layer. As I said, because this is still a text layer, we can double click, and if we wanted to, we can easily change the text to anything we want. So we can put the UK spelling in there, for example, or get rid of that. So very easy, very versatile. Okay, so to make things just a little bit clearer, let's just change this from layer 1, and we'll call this watercolor effect. So we now have a better understanding of what that is actually being used for. So the next thing we can do with this is making sure we've got that layer targeted. We can make sure we've got the move tool selected, and we can move this around to make sure we get the effect that works really well for the particular text we've got. So what I want to do is, where we've got this nice sort of watercolor bleed, I want to make sure that's evident on there. If I want to sort of rotate this a little bit, I can press Control or Command T on the keyboard, and you can see we can now adjust just that watercolor effect layer, just to get exactly where we want. Obviously making sure that we don't lose part of the actual underlying image and lose that, sort of show some of the original text. So you can see if I move over, we get this green. That's the green of the text itself. So I'm just being careful that I don't show any of that. Okay, so I kind of like the way that looks. I'll press Enter to finalize that alteration. So we've got that exactly where we want it to be. So we've done with that layer. What we're going to do now is bring in some additional layers from behind this to give it a sort of more, as if it's been painted onto watercolor on top, so we kind of have that overall effect that just looks pretty cool. So what we're going to do first of all is come over to this layer, and we're going to use this as the overall background behind the actual physical text layer. So again, making sure I've got the move tool selected, simply drag that up, drop it onto our image, let go, and that goes into the back. So just reposition that where we want, and we'll do again, same thing again. We'll zoom out a little bit, press Control or Command T until we can see exactly what we're doing with this, and we'll resize everything. Okay, let's get that where we want it to be. So that's looking pretty good. Zoom back in a little bit, making sure that we've got everything on screen. We're not losing anything for this example. There we go, that looks pretty good. Press Enter to commit the changes on there. Do the same again now. So I'm going to close some of these layers that I've finished with, so just to make my workspace just a little bit easier to work with. So we're going to take some of these splashes now. You can see I've got different sort of paint splat effects because they're going to add a little bit of character to the overall image. So again, we're going to do the same thing. Drag and drop these onto the relevant layer, relevant image, resize. So just zoom out, resize these. All the time to constrain the proportions, I'm just holding the Alt and the Shift key down just to make sure that I don't distort these images. So let's just zoom in. I'm going to angle that around a little bit. Got a nice kind of paint splat in the corner. Again, press Enter to commit those changes. And I'm just going to repeat this now for the other paint splats that we have. Just drag those in. Control T, zoom out, Shift and Alt, constrain those proportions. Press Enter to commit. So that looks pretty good. Let's zoom back in. Okay, so we've got our effect on there. We can reposition these and resize them and do whatever we kind of want to get it to exactly how you kind of like the effect. The only thing I'm making sure of is that these sit below the overall text layer. So next up, we're just going to click on the text layer, select both of those layers by holding the Shift key down, Control T again. I'm just going to angle this a little bit to give it a bit of a more sort of dynamic look to it. There we go, that's pretty good. Okay, so that's looking quite nice. I like that effect, but we're finding that the actual watercolor text is kind of getting just a little bit lost in there. Well, we can do some more things to this. We can adjust this and make it stand out a little better. So one method we could use, which is quick and easy, is to simply add a curves adjustment layer to the text. So let's just come down and select, and we're going to add in a curves adjustment. Again, we're going to do the same thing again, making sure this is positioned above the watercolor effect and the watercolor text layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Alt key down again, go in between the two layers and click just to make sure that this adjustment is only going to affect the watercolor effect and the watercolor text. So it's not going to have any change to the background because I like the way they look. With that done, I can simply come over and start adjusting my curves layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a center point. I'm going to drag that down, and you can see as we do that, we darken that text down and it starts to stand out and pop a lot better. We could leave it there if we want to, and it's entirely up to you and the kind of effect that you're looking for. For me, that looks pretty good. I kind of like the way that is. So I'm going to leave that there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to come down to the watercolor text layer, making sure we target the text layer itself. I'm going to come down to the effects section, and we're going to click on there, and we're going to add in a drop shadow. Click on there and you can see we now start to add a drop shadow effect to the text, which makes it look like it stands off just a little bit off the background. Now obviously this is personal taste, entirely up to you. You want to do this if you want to do it at all, but I find that it works really well, and you can see we can adjust the distance on there. We can make sure it sits exactly how we want it to, adjust the spread on there so you get exactly the effect that you're happy with. Let's bump the opacity up a little bit so it's a little stronger. And there we go. So you click OK on that. That now stands out a lot better. So let's take a look at before and after. So you can see it now pops off the background. Obviously, if you want to, you can come down to any of these layers that we've added into the background itself with the paint splashes and adjust the opacity on there to make them a little more subtle so they don't sort of vie for your attention. Entirely up to you how you'd want to go about doing this. But you can see we can very quickly and easily create a great looking watercolor text effect inside Photoshop with a couple of textures and a nice looking font. And that's really all there is to it. So we've now got a great looking effect that's fully editable. We can go back at any point and change the text to anything else we want. So we've got a great editable image we can just change and use as we see fit.
Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all the content we add every single week. If any techniques that you'd like to see covered on this video channel, please pop those in the comment section below. Or if you just got general feedback, again, pop that in the comment section below. We'd love to hear what you've got to say about the tutorials and what you'd like to see in the future. Well, until next time, take care.